Hello, everybody, and welcome back to my podcast, Free Agent. I am Meg Schmitz, and you are going to enjoy the heck out of today's guest. But to set things up, the podcast, Free Agent, is a place where the discussion is all about free agency and taking control over your future. The mission of my show is to share inspiring conversations with real people who took the leap into self-employment, business ownership, franchising, and freedom. From corporate refugees and executives tired of the desk job to entrepreneurs and investors looking to share camaraderie and inspiration through their business journey, my podcast aims a spotlight on real people who stepped into the unknown, took control of their destiny, and became their own boss. A lot of these conversations you won't hear people talk about openly. Business owners have struggles and challenges, and the rewards are immense. And today I have invited Erin Mack to join me to talk about that topic. So welcome, Erin.
Thanks so much, Meg, for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, you and I had a great conversation. I think it was just last week. And what started off to be a scheduled 1 hour turned into 2 hours of really great exchanges about. So I want you to introduce yourself, going back to and lay out the timeline from when did you step into business ownership? Did you start that business from scratch? And then we'll just migrate into the role that you play now in working with entrepreneurs and helping them find joy. So take us back to the beginning.
Okay. So the impetus to all of this entrepreneurial business was actually that I was going to some couples counseling with an ex-boyfriend of mine. And in that counseling session, the first one, I had a panic attack. And needless to say, long story short, I ended up with an anxiety disorder, and that resolved itself. And I vowed to myself after that experience, because I literally holed myself up for nearly a year in my home, that I would live my life very differently. And so at the time I was a special ed teacher in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I decided that I was going to move back to Hawaii and create a simpler life. Needless to say, the simpler life, that location does not exist externally. It's inside of you. So all of my craziness went to Hawaii thinking that I would have a simpler life. And I literally had a list of 3 things I wanted to do every day. My goal: start a business, work part-time, and pick a plumeria, a flower that they make leis out of, the white ones that smell really good, every day. So that was my attempt to, find peace and dictate my, not only my income, but my time, which is what every entrepreneur is about, right?
Absolutely. Those 3 points are top of everyone's list.
Yeah, that's why you become an entrepreneur, because you're skilled enough, you recognize that you're in an industry or whatever, that you can actually do it as well as whoever you've been working for, typically. And then you can dictate your time and your energy and the amount of money. There's no cap on that, supposedly. And then you get into it and it's all different. But anyway, so I moved to Hawaii, and those were my goals. And being the type A personality that I used to be, I immediately found a client within 24 hours. I really had no idea what I was doing, but I met, my sister lived in Hawaii, and I she said, let's go play some pool. So we went to play pool, and I met this gentleman, and he was like, I just moved here, but I want to start a business. I don't know how to do that, and I don't have time to do it because my day job is super busy. Would that be something that you would be interested in doing? And I was like, sure, no problem. I'll figure it out. Right.
Wow. Yeah.
So within 24 hours, I started with my new client, and I began he wanted to start a car wash. And I began to figure out, environmentally what was acceptable on the islands for that sort of thing, and what it actually took, what paperwork and all the things. And so I started there. And then, and I'm dating myself now, I put an ad in the paper that said, hire a housewife, will cook, clean, run errands, whatever. And you can imagine I got some interesting calls. But
I bet. Yeah.
and then I landed two more clients. One was a gentleman who was training for a race and needed somebody. He was so busy with his own business that he wasn't able to cook the food in this. He was doing that blood type diet to cook it in bulk so that he could just heat it up as he needed, because he was a super busy entrepreneur. And so I started cooking for him. And then a gentleman out in the resort area hired me to do kind of all of the things that I had listed, right? Not the cleaning part, but he was also wanting to start a business in Hawaii, successful entrepreneur. So I knew how to start a business in Hawaii because I'd had this client. And then I cooked for him a couple of days a week, and I did some grocery shopping and that sort of thing for him. And so it started there. And then that first client, he was a superintendent on a construction site. And he said, I noticed that you said cleaning. We're doing this commercial building. Could you do the construction cleaning? And I thought, I don't know how to do construction cleaning. He said, I'll get you the contract. You can learn on the job. And so it literally started there. And this is in 2000. So in Hawaii, and I'm sure lots of other places, there was a lot of growth going on. And so I started there. I hired my stepsister. We cleaned this enormous commercial building by ourselves, figured it out. And then from there, I literally walked on different job sites and just with my card and said, I have a construction cleaning company. Do you? And then I also continued on the catering side. So then literally we're, a couple months in, and I've got now a construction cleaning business and a catering business. And that went on for a little while, but the construction cleaning got so busy. And I started to branch into residential, and then we ended up doing property management, and that I had to make a decision. I wasn't able to manage the both of them. So, and then that grew to fruition. I had it for 18 years and I sold it a few years ago.
Wow. Talk about starting small. Talk about dropping the piece of popcorn into the pan and turning up the heat and watching it go pew. That's just explosive. I didn't get that layer of detail last week when we were talking. That's immense. It's just immense growth. It must have provoked some of the old feelings, anxiety wise. I'm just thinking out loud here. How did you manage? Were you in a relationship? Get into a relationship? How did you personally manage? What was your support system at that point?
That's a good question. I was in a relationship, but it wasn't a great one for the first few years of my business. And when I was able to let that relationship go, and I actually ended up marrying and having a child with my ex-husband, he was supportive in that he did the, because as I told you, we did property management, went into property management. He started to do the homes and doing the maintenance and those sorts of things. So that was super helpful. But I'll tell you, about 10 years into that business, I had like a personal crisis because the story goes like this. As an entrepreneur, type A, 100% integrity, all about customer service. I was extreme. If a client called and complained, I took it personally. Yeah. I mean, there were times where things happened out in the field that I was completely overwhelmed by, and I was just, I'll give you a scenario. We did a lot of construction cleaning on multi-million-dollar homes in the Four Seasons Resort. And one day there was this immense house that had all this teak decking that led into going over water features all over the house. Everything was pods with this massive decking. teak, brand new installed. The water pump went out in the house because the electricity had an issue. And so my staff, instead of letting me know, decided to use the water from the water features to clean the decking, the teak decking, which as obviously has some chlorine in it. It completely spotted the entire decking. And, I had a solution for it, and then they needed to sand it and repaint it again anyway, but I had to create that solution because the homeowners were coming. Yeah. So it's literally, there are those Cinderella moments in your entrepreneurial journey that are, literally, like I'm on the ground, on my knees with my staff, like rubbing out all this with lemon oil and, just moments like that where I would just burst into tears and just be beside myself. And I thought, because I didn't have any experience, I really had no business opening a business, but I didn't have any experience in terms of the resiliency that it takes sometimes to just kind of navigate the day to day. When you have I had 20 plus staff, both, in the office and mostly out in the field. And there's only I'm one person, I can only control so much of that. And as come to find out, you really can't control a whole heck of a lot. But those moments, I would just feel like I would just think, because, it's a small island, I'm thinking, I ruined this decking. Like, I'm done. Like, nobody's ever going to hire me again. This guy's probably going to tell everybody that it's a sham. I'm a horrible business owner, whatever. Like those thoughts went through my mind for years. And then there was an impetus at about 10 years where a client called, and she was like screaming at me on the phone. Yeah. And I said, I'll be right there to fix the problem. And I raced over to a friend's house to drop my kid off for a couple of hours while I managed the situation. And as I was backing into her driveway, because I was so like frantic in my mind, I sideswiped my car on her husband's truck. And there's no damage to his truck, but mine was like the whole side it was awful. So I said, I'm so sorry. And I left and I took care of it. And I came back a couple hours later, and she said, I said, how'd everything go? She said, fine. She's like, but I need to tell you something. And I said, what's that? She said, when you sideswiped your car, Dave, my husband, was underneath his truck working on the truck, and he thought the truck was going to land on him. And I just about lost it. I was like, okay, that's enough. Like you cannot get so focused on providing something and nearly kill somebody because you're so crazy in your mind about getting there to fix this thing or, defending your honor or whatever that is. Mm-hmm. And that was my wake up call where I just said, this is not okay. It's not okay to live your life under this extreme amount of stress. It's not okay to be beholden to clients and staff and other people. And I was losing, those things. The money was always there for me. It was just the time. I could dictate some of it, but I wasn't, even though I could, show up to my kids' school and do all the things and be there for all of the activities, I wasn't there.
Yeah.
I was mentally on my phone, dealing with clients, dealing with staff. And it took me 10 years in to say, enough. This is not okay to live your life this way. It's not okay to be this stressed out. It's not okay to feel this way. And so I made a huge shift in my company, and I basically stopped taking clients that didn't my goal was, or my intention was, I will no longer take clients that don't appreciate my staff, myself, and the service that we're providing. Yeah. And as soon as I did that, lo and behold, those people don't show up anymore. But you have to make that intention, But it started from, again, I didn't know what I was doing. So I said, I can do that. I'll do that. I'll do all the things, right? And then as you get into 5 and 10 years into your business, you get to recognizing that you cannot do all those things. And there is a sweet spot, not only in terms of the amount of clientele you'll take on, but also what are you providing? Like, what's the service you're providing? And getting super clear on that, so that from that moment that you have that conversation with the potential new client, you're clear. This is who we are. This is what we can provide. If you need outside of that, then the almost guarantee is that we will miss the mark at some point, right? And so why even get into that exchange? So
it seems like human nature, though, for entrepreneurs or business owners, even in franchising. I see it all the time. And I know you do too with your clientele. It seems like it's human nature to keep reaching and have a new idea and, the shiny, sparkly thing. And it's another revenue stream. But to your point, you lost Erin on the inside. You were engaged with your child at her school activities, but I know what that's like. You're not really there. And I had a situation similar to your side swipe where I was backing out of a parking space at a grocery store, and I thankfully just hit the shopping cart of the person who was walking behind my car. But I was like hammer down backing out, and it scared the heck out of me too. So in recognizing that this is sort of typical, how did you change your focus? And then how, as you're engaging with other entrepreneurs, what are you seeing is typical in terms of pulling out of that mindset that you can do it all, or that you have to offer more? How do you pull out of that?
Well, I mean, part of it was that piece that I was just saying, getting super clear on, first and foremost, getting super clear on why are you doing what you're doing? And I'm not talking about monetarily and having time and flexibility and any of that nonsense, which is lovely. Those are all wonderful things. I am talking about the deeper why. Like, why are you in this world? Why do you exist? What is your unique proposition as a person? And really getting to know what that is, because it doesn't matter what industry you're in. If you don't have that, you will have a challenging entrepreneurial life across the board. You are not ever going to find any sort of stillness or peace of mind or any of those things. And those are the things. Like, let's be honest here. We talk about success all the time. We talk about money. We talk about status, all the things, collecting stuff. When you're on your deathbed, the last thing you're thinking about is, I wish I had worked more. I wish I had amassed more money, and I wish I had more things. So this is the mindset that needs to be put forth. We have limited time here. This is no joke. We act like we have all the time in the world. We do not. We have this moment right here is the only guarantee. If you truly believed that, intellectually we understand it, but if you truly believe that on a deep level, you would not waste your time doing stuff that does not fill you up on a regular basis. You're exchanging your time as an entrepreneur in your work. And this goes for people who aren't even entrepreneurs. If you're exchanging your time at work and you do not find any fulfillment in it, that is a waste of time, because you could be spending that time with people that you love and creating memories. That's what's important in this life. So when we shift to what's actually important in our life, everything else lines up. But it's counterintuitive, because we think that if we get all these things in place, then we'll be happy. Then we'll have the relationships. Then we'll have the memories and the traveling and all the things. Sorry to inform you, it's actually the opposite. You have to get mentally where you want to be prior to. Then you can get there quickly and with ease. There is no more of this beating our heads against the wall and grinding it out. This is not the way. Trust me. You will not be on your deathbed going, I'm so glad I grinded out that business and made all that money. No. And I'm not against making money. I love money too. It's a means to an end. It's fantastic. It affords all kinds of wonderful things, but it's that internal experience that's got to be changed around, because until you do that, you will not experience your business in the way you want to. You will continue to be the 4-letter work.
Yes. And so when you and I were talking last week, we also spent time talking about the difference between happiness. Meg, are you happy? Yes, I am happy. I love my life. I love my husband. But as you said, is it joyful? Is it, and talk about the difference as you define it between happiness and joy, and where that fulfillment comes from.
Yeah, I mean, happiness is a fleeting, temporary experience. I got a new car. Yay. You're only going to be so excited about your car for so long. I mean, I guess it depends on the car, but it's temporary, right? I mean, it's based on an external event or thing, right? And for me, and this was another impetus that happened also around this same time, is I was searching for that happiness over and over again externally. So it was like, let me get my business to X amount of income. Let me get physically, I was like, oh, first I started with CrossFit. Then I started doing triathlons. Then I was training for a half Ironman. And then I got a concussion, just the most random way. And all of a sudden I went, what am I doing? Like, I'm killing myself here. Like, I literally was so exhausted. And then I would get across the finish line of a race and go, wow, that was really cool. I can't believe I did that. And then I would go home and look for the next race, right? The next harder, bigger race, or how could I do it faster, or right? So it's this like racing to get to these things. And then you get there and the happiness is there for a moment, but it's fleeting. Joy is an internal experience that you do experience occasionally, most people, but I'm here to tell you that you can actually find your joy and cultivate it daily. And it's our birthright. It's actually how we're supposed to be going through this life. It's just that nobody talks about this stuff. And so that internal experience of joy looks like, I tell clients all the time they're like, I don't feel good. I'm like, well, why don't you go for a walk in nature? I never say, man, that was a stupid idea after I leave the park, right? So those, or when you're like, feel like you're, in the middle of a forest and you can just feel like how good it feels to be moving your body, and the air feels clean and it's quiet and still, like that's joy. Like the experience I have in this life now is stillness. Like there is stillness in the background of my life all the time, no matter what's going on. So when I'm working with a client, what we're working on is to get out of that craziness of, I got to do all the things all the time and be 100% all in everywhere, to how can I create that stillness? I mean, there are moments where joy is like, I'm dancing around the kitchen and, doing those things, but I'm talking about that stillness, that peace of mind where you have meaning in every moment, or most moments, where you're connected and conscious and available, like to the people in your life and to yourself, most importantly.
And that seems like something that maybe it's like quitting smoking or losing weight. Is that something that people have to, do you work with your clients to train them how to adapt their mindset and what triggers to look for?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. It is a process. It's not a quick fix. And I hate to inform you that it's not a quick fix, but I'll tell you that the other side is incredible. Like my life is fulfilling from moment one, all day long, every day. Like I'm checked in. I'm here now talking, on this podcast. I'm in it all the time. And most people have, some people call it flow state or whatever. They have that occasion like, oh man, I'm really getting a lot of work done. Oh, I'm really like on target. I'm really focused, right? Like that is my state. I am in that state almost exclusively. And it feels fantastic. And how you get there is, so one thing I'll say is change happens like this. And I know everybody loves change, right? Woohoo, change. No, nobody likes change.
We got a big serving of that last year.
Nobody likes change. But when you accept it, then you can have a totally different experience. But change happens like this. It happens first with awareness. You become aware of, usually it's crisis, or you're just completely stressed out or whatever, right? You're just like, enough. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to feel this way anymore, right? So that's the awareness piece. You're like, oh, that's happening. Mm. I help them get more and more aware by recognizing that we have this voice in our head that's talking to us. Often it's saying not really great things to us. So getting more and more awareness around what's actually going on in your mind, right? Secondly is some strategies. And the strategies look like, first, exercises on how do I become aware of, what am I saying to myself, right? Because that voice is attached to beliefs structures that you've created at a young age. And so those structures are where you pull your information from to make decisions. And so you want to get to those. And how you get to those is you start hearing what's happening up here. We have something like, I don't know, I think it's like 20 plus thousand thoughts a day. I'm not asking you to think of every thought, clearly, but there are some recurring messages that are going on, often negative ones. And so when you can find those, and then I have different techniques that I teach to letting those go, to really getting past them, and then inserting new beliefs, right? And it's really all about perspective, right? So we all have these like past things that have told us how this life is supposed to be.
Yeah.
And those are the lenses and the filters in which we see everything. And mine is different than yours, is different than everybody that's listening. We're all very different in terms of our experience that we use to see. It's the glasses that we use to see this life. And when you can when you can get rid of and then insert some new perspectives, some new ways to see things, it changes everything, right? Yeah. I'll give you like a really silly example. My boyfriend is really into the Grateful Dead. I had no idea who they were. And lo and behold, they had still do have a huge following.
Yeah.
I had zero awareness of them. All of a sudden, he's telling me about them. And everywhere I look, there are Grateful Dead bumper stickers that I would never have seen prior to that, right? Yeah. And that's a silly example, but it's you expand that out and recognize that if you have a belief that tells you that this life is this way, that being successful looks like I've got to work really hard and grind it out and maybe I'll get lucky, which was my message growing up.
Grinder.
Then guess what? Grinding it out, hoping to get lucky, working myself to the bone. Yeah, I did that for years. I don't do that anymore. It's not worth it, right? But that is a belief. That's an example of a belief that I had growing up. And it's not something somebody sat you down and said, this is how it is. You just pick it up. As a kid, you're picking up, all kinds of things from people, things they're saying to you that you're deciding about yourself. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Do you find that as you're working with your clients that there's resistance to accepting that and letting it go? In other words, are they fearful that if they change, then they will be less successful or fill in the blank? But head trash from the entrepreneur?
No, actually. I'll tell you, I want to tell you the last step of that change piece, and then I'll explain why that's not the case. The last step is practicing the new way of being, which is the hardest part. It's one thing to get aware of your thoughts and your actions and the things that you do and think and your emotions. We didn't talk about that, but I could tell you what your emotions are actually signaling and it's not what you think, and you aren't your emotions. Just FYI, in case anybody's wondering, if you're on a roller coaster ride, that has nothing to do with your actual emotions, because that's not who you actually are. It has to do with something else. But that third piece of practice is really about practicing the new way of being. And it's so challenging because we've practiced this other way for so long. And so a lot of times, the growth that happens will happen quickly at first because it's like, ooh, new idea. I'm excited about it. But this is the way to actually change the outcomes that you want. And practicing the new way does not feel good, nor does it feel right. And it's not going to happen immediately. If you've been practicing being angry about things for a really long time, you can imagine if you challenge that anger one time, it's not going away.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to keep challenging it and challenging it and challenging it. And that's where the work is. But you can make these small strides. Thinking of like in an example of a client where he was having a challenge with a partner. And in his eyes, he was like, man, this guy is just so full of himself. And we get into these meetings and he's just arrogant and he just says the wrong thing. And, you know, we're trying to land funding for these projects and he's just spouting off about whatever. And he's, you know, this rich kid that, you know, we brought in because of his contacts and whatever. And I said, if I could show you that he is giving you your biggest gifts in this life, if I could show you how he is alerting you to where your own personal growth is, would that be of interest to you? And he was like, yeah, you know, I'd love to see how this guy is in any way, shape, or form a gift to me, right? And I said, okay, so here's the thing. You've got to stop. So then, you know, as we were going along, we unpacked a belief that he had around when he was a kid. His stepfather owned, I think it was a gas station or with a convenience store or whatever. And it was actually, and he owned several of them and he was very successful. But as a kid, he would go and help at in the summer or whatever. And he hated that these rich people would come and he would fill their gas and they would look down on him, right? So he took that, put it on his partner, right? It's the same thing. And that's what I want to tell your audience is that those people that challenge you the most is where your biggest growth is, because there is something there for you to unpack and to navigate through. And that's why they exist. And they will continue to exist in different shapes and forms, the exact same thing. So if you know that, why wouldn't you go ahead and take care of that now versus continuing to have that relationship over and over again?
So what I would love for my audience to do is to reach out to you to find that joy, because I'm working with these people, business owners, whether they buy a business or open a franchise or start right from scratch as an entrepreneur. This notion of finding joy and understanding the difference between that happiness and working yourself to death, which is really easy to do if you have a vision and focus. So how can people contact you, Erin? Because I think you provide a really valuable service.
Oh, thanks. There's a couple things. One is you can definitely get me on my website, which is erin-mac.com. But also on Instagram, I'm at Erin Mac LLC. And I have a ton of content on there, lots of videos, and obviously they're free. I mean, if you're on the path, I also, whenever I'm on a podcast, I also offer a free, call it what you will, consult discovery call. It's not a sales call. It really is about like, if I can get you on the right path, fantastic. If you want to go deeper and you want to really like unpack some things that you feel like are, holding you back from creating that life that you want, then we can do that deeper dive. But I'm more than happy to share what I know. And if it can get you in the right direction, I'd love to do that.
And you and I both have experienced the joys of business ownership and owning your life, owning your future, never being fired again. We are slave drivers in our own way. We do drive the ship, but there are a lot of topics I'd love for us to be able to explore further on another podcast, just talking about what's transformational about owning your own business and how do you maintain the joy of that and not get so stuck under the weight of all these other things that you have to do for your employees and your clients, and framing up the perspective that's a healthy perspective. I don't want you to share all your secret sauce, but there's so much more that I would like to pursue with you. And so we'll have to talk about that another time. But thank you so much for joining me today. And 2021, here's to finding your joy.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for having me. These podcasts are so important. Having this platform is so important, especially to entrepreneurs. It can be that lonely at the top thing. You can feel like, oh my gosh, I just can't do another day of making all these decisions and being the thing and being responsible for all these things and people. And it does get overwhelming, but there is a different way. There's a better way. And
there absolutely is. And I had my own transformation a few years ago in 2012. And really, audience, once you get that, once you hit that wall and you realize you're stuck and then get unstuck, the rewards are absolutely amazing. And that's what Erin is here to deliver. So you got to reach out to Erin.
Thanks, Meg.
All right. Well, thanks again. And we will talk again soon.